Well, I think movement, and especially movement through wrestling, has been a huge transformation for me because it's allowed me to just be a more complete person. I feel better. I have a much better attitude towards life just by being somebody who moves a lot, especially as I've gotten older and now that I've got kids. I love the fact that I'm able to move around and keep up with them. That's definitely something that's been a big impact for movement. If I was to give advice to anybody taking on wrestling or something as difficult as wrestling, it would be first and foremost to recognize that the journey itself is the goal. This is a sport that will take you many, many places, and it'll take you a long time to get there, and just stick with it and recognize that the skills and qualities and perseverance and friends you're going to make throughout the sport is what's going to be truly valuable at the end. When I was in high school, I was never the best wrestler on the team. I didn't start wrestling until I was a freshman. For me, it was a lot of just hard work and continue to recognize that there was something for me at the end. I didn't expect to be a state qualifier. I didn't expect to even make the varsity team. But I knew that if I continued to stick with this, I would be happy. I would have fun with it and I would enjoy it. So that for me was the adversity I needed to overcome. Ultimately, it ended up being better than I could have hoped for by getting a chance to make the team and getting a chance to have some success, and being a leader on the team was not something that I expected. When I got to college and even through my career, I've kept that idea that if you continue to work hard, if you continue to stay focused on the little things, whether it's technique, whether it's the individual conditioning, whether it's recognizing what is a measurable and attainable goal for yourself. Those are the things that I think have been very important for me in my success. Adversity that I've overcome, coming from a small town like Sycamore, you're never going to be prepared for some of the other things you're going to see in the world. I had to spend 2.5 years living abroad in Asia recently, and for me, coming from a town with cornfields on 3 sides of my house, different cultures, different languages, those type of barriers were things I had not been exposed to. It took a lot of time just to kind of recognize for me what success would be in that type of environment. I didn't need to learn Mandarin. I didn't need to learn how to speak Chinese to be able to communicate well. I just needed to be able to find a way to get my message across and have fun with people. And those are all little types of adversities that I feel like I've had to overcome. Indiana Jones. When I was a kid, I saw Indiana Jones and I wanted to be an archaeologist.
You studied under Professor Ravenwood at the University of Chicago.
Yes, I did.
Just as I got older, I learned that the character Indiana Jones is based on went to University of Chicago. So at that point, I was probably 10 years old. I said University of Chicago is where I wanted to go. As I continued to get older through high school, I realized how hard it was going to be to get in there. It's a top-tier academic school. I did not have top-tier academics, but I felt that I could get there eventually. One thing that worked out in my favor, one of the wrestling coach at University of Chicago was a Sycamore graduate, Leo Coker, and he spent a lot of time talking with me. Was a good friend of my father's, spent a lot of time talking to me about what classes I should take at Sycamore, what classes I should take at NIU separately in the summer to get myself prepared to be able to be successful at that school. Through wrestling, I got a lot of opportunities to just develop as an individual, and though I did not get accepted at University of Chicago out of high school, it gave me an opportunity through wrestling to go to the University of Illinois and be on their team. While I was there wrestling, I continued to do well in academics in Illinois, and I reapplied to transfer to the University of Chicago and got accepted that way. So it was a less direct route than most people would take, but basically I had a lot of perseverance. I knew that I wanted to get to University of Chicago. I knew that when I found out that I wasn't going to be able to go there immediately, that didn't eliminate my journey. That didn't deter me at all. It just meant that I had to find a different path. So the different path was go to Illinois, get good grades there, reapply, show them that I had the ability to be successful, and I eventually got in. In both places, whether you're talking about my time in Illinois or my time at Chicago, there was definitely a gap both in terms of academics and athletics. And the solution was pretty much the same. In athletics, for wrestling, I put in extra time. As I said, I would come in the mornings by myself, there'd be nobody there, and I would just work out by myself to try and get better. It's pretty much the same way with academics. Not only would I read the book, I would read the book twice. That meant working late into the night. I became very popular and familiar at the local library on campus. They knew me. They knew to tap me on the shoulder when it was time to go home because I was going to be there till it closed. And I really feel like it's simple things, just spending the extra time reading, spending the extra time not just doing the coursework once, or not just doing my problem sets once, but doing them a second time to make sure that I really understood what was behind the lesson that day or the lesson that week is really what allowed me to kind of bridge the gap and become a successful student at those schools. So in college wrestling, I found that I needed to reduce the number of things I was doing, have a very small portfolio of moves, and be very proficient at those. It's the same thing in my business career now. I'm responsible for distilling a whole lot of information about the world into a very small update for our senior leadership. And that requires a lot of repetition, a lot of writing and rewriting, a lot of taking a very complex message and distilling it down to its essence, to its most simplest form, to be able to communicate to them quickly what is going on in the world. So one thing that I took with me from wrestling through my entire life, and even something I do today, is videotaping myself to understand my performance. In wrestling, you videotape all your matches, or sometimes even your practices, to see what moves are working, how did you get beat, where did you miss an opportunity, and you learn from that. Even in my job today, I find that videotaping myself before a presentation, or walking through packets, what we call them, walking through a report and watching how my mannerisms and the word choice that I'm using, and am I stuttering or am I saying videotaping myself and trying to identify and isolate what are the things that I need to improve on has been a great thing for me to get successful. It's something that I recommend everybody do throughout their lives. Get that automatic feedback and find measurable and actionable things to improve on. When it comes to tracking, one thing I can think about is, and a great thing about wrestling is, especially in a place like Illinois, you see the same kids over and over again. You wrestle the same kids over and over again. And even when I wasn't winning a lot of matches, the way I would measure my success is, how did I do against that person the next time, or the third time, or the fourth time? And a great example, my first loss my senior year of high school was against Chris Rodriguez from Abonzi Valley, and he beat me 14-1, and it was brutal. Absolutely brutal. I was not a good wrestler at that point in my mind. The last match I had in high school was against Chris Rodriguez at the state tournament, and I lost that match 5-4, and I was this close to winning. And that right there showed me how much I had progressed over that one season. And that was a great example of how I can measure very directly what I've been doing from one point to the other. And I've definitely found that today, obviously in the work that I do today, it's all about measures, it's all about metrics. I look at numbers all the time. I look at my employees' numbers to understand how they're doing and how they've progressed from one spot to the next. And I even found ways to numerically value what is the work that they're doing, to try and isolate what are the things they need to improve on, or what are the things they need to focus on to continue to be more successful. And we can measure their progress in those ways as well. So when I think about mentorship, one thing for me is I've always been somebody who's sought out experts in whatever field it was. When it was wrestling, I sought out Dan Knight, right? He was my coach. He was a person who I needed to help me understand how to be better. When I got to college, I spent time with my professors or other students that were doing very well and trying to understand what was their approach to the problem set or the issue that we were trying to understand. When I got to work, it was the same thing. I found whether it was people that were above me, vice presidents in my company, or sometimes even people that were the same level or just entering the company. There were things that they did that I recognized they would do things better than me, and I sought out their expertise, and I just wanted to learn from them. What was their approach? What's their thought process? How do they think about these things? so that I could kind of take some of that away. I didn't take all of it away, but I took bits and pieces of what they told me and put it together with things I already knew or things I knew about myself, and I found ways to change my approach on different areas, and that's led to a lot of my success.